If you were the good kid growing up, there is a good chance that you became an adult who doesn't know who they are. And that sounds strange at first because you were responsible, you did what you were told to do, adults trusted you, you stayed out of trouble, and you may have even been the child that adults pointed to and said, why can't you be more like them? But here's the problem with that: being good and becoming yourself are not the same thing. Sometimes what adults call maturity was actually adaptation. You learned how to read the room. You learned what behavior was approved. You learned what disappointed people. You learned when to stay quiet. You learned how to be useful. You even learned how to become easy to manage. And while none of those things are necessarily bad, the problem is what may have not been developed alongside them. Did anyone consistently ask you what you thought, what you preferred, what you wanted, what you disagreed with, what you believed, what decision you would make if nobody told you what the right answer was? Because identity is not something that suddenly appears or suddenly happens when you turn 18. Identity develops through thousands of small moments where a child gets to exercise judgment, preference, curiosity, disagreement, risk, responsibility, and even choice. That is formation. And if most of your developmental energy went towards becoming acceptable, you can arrive in adulthood extremely competent at responding to expectations while being strangely disconnected from yourself. And that is why some good kids grew up and become adults who say things like, I don't know what I want. I need somebody else's opinion before I decide. I feel guilty if I disappoint someone. I know what I'm supposed to do, but I don't know what I want to do. I've accomplished a lot, but I still don't feel like I know myself. This is not necessarily a character defect. It may be a developmental gap. You became highly practiced at answering one question: what is expected of me? But you may not have gotten enough practice answering another question: what do I judge to be right for me? And those are two very different muscles. Imagine a child who spends years using a GPS but never learns how to actually read a map. As long as somebody is giving directions, they look incredibly capable. Turn left, go here, do this, avoid that, excellent. But remove the instructions and suddenly something becomes obvious. They were trained to follow direction. They were never necessarily trained to orient themselves. And that is what happens to some good kids. Then adulthood comes along, and adulthood asks different questions. What career do you want? Who do you want to marry? It's a big one. What do you believe? What kind of life do you want to build? What are your boundaries? What matters enough for you to disappoint somebody? What do you do when two people you respect give you opposite advice? And suddenly, being good is not enough, because adulthood does not simply require obedience, it requires your judgment. This is where a lot of people begin thinking something is wrong with them. They look around and they see other adults making decisions quickly, expressing opinions confidently, changing careers, setting boundaries, taking risks. Meanwhile, they feel stuck. But the better question may not be, what is wrong with me? The better question may be, what did I not get enough practice doing? Maybe you didn't get enough practice disagreeing. Maybe you did not get enough practice choosing. Maybe you did not get enough practice failing without believing your worth was on trial. Maybe you did not get enough practice trusting your own perception. Maybe you learned how to be responsible before you learned how to be self-directed. And that distinction matters, because once you understand that this is a formation problem, you stop treating it like a permanent identity. You can develop what was interrupted. And one of the first ways you can do that is surprisingly simple. Start making small judgments without immediately outsourcing them. When somebody asks where you want to eat, do not automatically say, I don't care. Choose. When someone asks, what do you think about something? Resist the urge to search the room for the safest answer. Answer. When you are making low stakes decisions, notice how quickly you want reassurance. Pause before asking for it. You're not trying to become stubborn, you're trying to build capacity, because self-trust is not built by telling yourself, trust myself. It is built by repeatedly making judgments, acting on them, observing the consequences, and then learning. That is how formation works. You act, you receive feedback, you adjust, you act again. Over time, something starts to change. You no longer need everyone to approve before you move. You can hear advice without surrendering authorship of your life. You can disappoint somebody without assuming you did something wrong. You can make a mistake without turning it into an identity crisis. And maybe most importantly, you can begin discovering that underneath the good kid, there was always a person with preferences, a person with convictions, a person with judgment, a person with desires, a person capable of becoming more than whatever version of them kept everybody else comfortable. The goal is not to stop being good. The goal is to stop confusing goodness with disappearing. And this is exactly why I wrote the book, So You Were Neglected, Now What? Because a lot of adults are trying to fix what they think is a personality problem when they are actually dealing with interrupted formation. The book helps you identify what may not have been developed, understand how that still shows up in adulthood, and begin rebuilding those capacities intentionally. If this video feels uncomfortably familiar, the link to the book is in the description. You may not need to become somebody completely different. You may need to finish developing capacities you never had room to practice. And in the next video, I want to talk about one of the biggest consequences of this: why good kids often struggle to make decisions as adults. Because once you understand that mechanism, a lot of your hesitation starts making sense.